So, on this row, which is a standard sort of free rate 5k test, I managed to get I think a 33 second or 32-second PB, which is pretty colossal. And so I wanted to have a chat about it and show it whilst it's happening and talk about sort of the build up to it and the plan for it and the execution of the plan and how I personally think it went. So I think my PB before this was whilst at university in my last year, and it was, I think, 17 minutes and 24 seconds. And I distinctly remember in that test really dying around the 3 kilometre mark. I was holding pretty decent split, not as good as the one I'm holding in this one, but 3k rolled round, and it was just I was very uncomfortable and quite a lot of sort of that burny pain in like your legs, and I just felt like I wasn't getting the air in that I needed, and I just remember really backing off and then coming back in for the final 500 and finishing reasonably strong, but ultimately ending with like a sort of like 144-ish average on my 5k, and that was the last time I did one. And since then, we finished that rowing season, but doing no more 5k tests. And yeah, since then, after university, took a year off, basically all training. Then in 2019, I started to train a little bit, nothing crazy, just going to the gym a couple of times a week and things. And then 2020, I had glandular fever very early in the year and had it very, very, very badly. And I lost a lot of weight because I was hospitalised for about a week. And when I came out of hospital, I wasn't allowed to train at all. I was not meant to train for 6 weeks. I was meant to get blood tests done to make sure I could go back to training, because apparently something that can happen is that your organs can expand slightly, and it means that if you put your like torso under a lot of stress, you can rupture. I don't know. You can rupture organs in your body. Didn't quite fancy that, so I was going to wait for the blood test, but I never got those blood tests done because the pandemic struck not long afterwards, and literally the day I was meant to get my blood works done was the first day that all the GPs closed for business, and they were closed for a little while whilst they were sort of figuring everything out and trying to sort their logistics out. Yeah, so I basically never got that done, so I played it safe and took another like 3 or 4 weeks off. And I was told that I might suffer from chronic fatigue, and I could suffer from chronic fatigue for quite a while, but I felt okay. So I started going back to the gym, started lifting weights and stuff, but just lifting weights, not really doing anything else. And then over the summer, I picked up cycling. And cycling was something that I really took to and I really enjoyed. And for the first time, I think ever, even though I was a rower, I did proper like aerobic training. Because when you're training at university and you're training around a lot of other people, it's very hard to do the UT2 pieces like at UT2, because you're looking to the person to your left and to your right, and you know you're competing for a seat in a boat, and they're pulling 158, 157, and you're like, well, my UT2 really should be like 201, but I know that I can pull this piece at 156, and the coach is over there and he's looking at everyone's screens, so I kind of want to just yank chain and just pull a bit harder, which is not very intelligent training. It will get you fitter initially, obviously, sort of anything would, but in the long term, it's quite detrimental to your training because you just don't really train that aerobic base properly. And I think that's probably what happened to me through university, is I did a lot of training. I trained very hard, but I didn't train very smart. And so with the cycling, because cycling is so long distance, I didn't do anything anaerobic base load. I just did tons and tons of 1 hour, 2 hours, sometimes 5 or 6 hour rides on the weekends with people when we were allowed to, and I Zwifted a lot, like I said, like sort of 2 hour sessions on the turbo trainer, and I really enjoyed it because I could just chat to friends or watch a movie or watch a film, and watch some TV and just like get in some like quality miles, like really low heart rate, long sessions. And then come the sort of new year, or sort of like maybe come like sort of start of December, end of November, I decided that in 2021 it'd be nice to row again. And obviously I can't row for a team at the moment because everywhere is closed, and even if they were open, I do my PhD, so I live with my parents at the moment, and they're not spring chickens, so I wouldn't really want to go and mix with a load of people anyway. I sort of want to play it safe. So I instead decided that I would start taking my training seriously, and I got myself a rowing coach. And so I'd been part of a indoor rowing group called Row Elite for maybe like a year and a half. I'd never had done any of the programs. All I did was I rowed and cycled for the team, and I contributed like miles and meters to their club, so that in the sort of like season competitions they could use my miles and meters to rank their team against other teams. It's just a bit of fun. But I'd seen a lot of people in the club have a lot of success. They're very strong rowers. They're very fit and very motivated people. And so I got in touch with Matthew Tarrant, who is the lead coach and head of Row Elite, and had a chat with him. Filled out a questionnaire. What have I done in the past? How experienced am I? And what are my goals and what are my motivations? And I gave him all the details that I possibly could, and he put me on he gave me a tailored rowing program that he gives me a week. Every week I get a new program. Maybe sometimes it's 2 weeks in a trot, but usually it's just week by week basis. Which is really nice because I think that my training had started to get a bit stale. I'm a very big fan of doing a lot of the same pieces multiple times over a long period of time, because it's really easy to see whether you're improving or not. The caveat with that is obviously that you don't really stay dynamic, and also it becomes quite difficult to do periodization, because you should really do an aerobic base building phase, and then a build phase, and then a peaking phase. But having no competitions means, well, when do I do a peaking phase? And I'm not like knowledgeable enough in athletics and personal training to know really how to do these phases properly. So I decided that I would just do 6 sessions a week that were pretty easy, UT2, 1 or 2 sessions a week that were UT1, and then 1 session a week that was like sprint style, 2K, or a couple of 2Ks, a couple of 1Ks or 500s kind of thing. But having Matt take me on has given me he's clearly periodized my training much more effectively. I'd say something that I don't want to go into detail about the program and stuff that he does, because obviously it's paid for and that's his product. But we have gone through what I would call is like a base building phase, which had a lot of hard pieces in it, but the hard pieces were not short. The shortest pieces I was doing were like 1,500 meters, and usually I'm used to doing a couple of 500s or even 250s on occasions. But it's meant that I'm quite aerobically strong, and probably the most aerobic I have ever been. And you'll see that in this piece, because I don't do a sprint really at the end. Well, I do a little sprint at the end, but nothing like I used to do at university. But what I do manage to do is hold a really flat, consistent split at a really high heart rate for a very considerable amount of time. My max heart rate is 196, 195. I haven't really seen 195s or 194s for quite a while in our training, just simply because I think that my muscular system is probably not strong enough to push my cardio system that hard at the moment. Like, my heart and lungs are quite strong, which meant that the plan for this 5K for me was, I did a couple of pieces leading up to it. I did some 2x20s with a nice long rest in between. So they were borderline max effort, these 2x20s, and they were rate locked. So I couldn't just focus on rate. And I managed sort of mid 144s for them, which was good confidence for me, because they're hard pieces to do. You're in the bin for a long time. If you're doing a 20-minute piece, you have to suffer for about 12 minutes. So they built a lot of confidence, and also they laid like a good foundation for something like a 5K. Had a chat with Matt, and we were debating about whether I should go for 142, 141, maybe even 143. So we did another sort of like test piece it wasn't a test, but it was just to see how I responded. We did some 3Ks, responded quite healthily to them, and I just said to him, look, I'm just going to go for 141. I know I don't have a sprint in me. I'm not going to be able to make up a lot of time in the last K. I'm just going to hammer out. I'm just going to get the wheel going, get it spinning, and then just sit on about 135 watts, 134 watts, which is about 141.2 for most of the piece. And I'm just going to hold it there, and I'll just do anything that I can to keep it there. And I'm just going to stay as comfortable as I can, as chilled as I can, as relaxed as I can, and just keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing. Maybe do an assessment around 2K to go, especially because, like I said, in my last 5K, which was 2 years ago, that 3K mark is definitely the make or break, because you're at maximum pain, you're at maximum tolerance, and the end just isn't quite in sight. You can't see the finish with 2K to go. It's pretty rough. But when you start to get to maybe 1800, 1700 meters left, at that point you can start willing yourself forward and just saying, you've done 3,300 meters. You're not going to bottle it at 1,700 meters, are you? But that 300 meter gap is that's where I think a lot of people fail. They might, or if they don't fail, they probably back off a little bit because they just start to think, wow, this is bad. But the way I got through it in this piece was I told myself, look, this really hurts and it's very uncomfortable. But I don't think it can get any worse, which means that I should just be able to see it through. Flawed logic maybe, but that was the logic that got me through. And you can see that I think I'm coming up to the sort of 3K mark around here, and you can see my heart rate is basically at max. And my watts have dropped a little bit. I think that middle K was at 141.5. You'll see the erg screen at the end of the piece. But ultimately managed to just keep pressing, keep pushing, keep picking it up at the front end. Staying reasonably smooth. I don't think I look too laboured at this point, considering that I'm at my max heart rate. I think I look kind of okay. Some facial expressions maybe giving my poker face away a little bit, but just kept pressing, and like I said, I just had a plan. The plan was to stay on 141s and just executed it, and I think it went really well. I'm looking forward to the next 5K. Maybe not entirely true, but I think that with some anaerobic training, there's probably a lot more to find in that last K. There's the last K of this, I think I do in 140.4, which is only one split higher than the entire piece. At that point I was pretty knackered. But like I said, historically, when I was at university, I would sit much lower on the split. My final 1K would be, 3 or 4 splits better than, or lower than everything else, which I'm now finding out is not great pacing. But I'm just hopeful that with a little bit of peaking, with a little bit of building, doing some shorter pieces and stuff like that, and also being able to get back into the gym, because I haven't been able to hit any squats or deadlifts or anything for quite a while with anything heavy. We'll see that time hopefully come down a little bit. I'm carrying a little bit of winter weight here, so a little bit, maybe 5 kilos of winter weight, which I'm perfectly happy with. I like to eat over Christmas, sue me. But it managed to carry me through this 5K, which I'm pretty pleased with, and hopefully you'll sort of see the result as well. The main training was just tons of UT2. So it's just an actual UT2, and I think that's been the biggest difference with having a coach that's actually dictating my splits and telling me what I should be aiming for, versus a coach who just says to go on an 18 kilometer or 20 kilometer row. Is I sit there and I actually hit the split, and my UT2 at the moment is around 2:01 or 2-minute splits kind of thing, and it feels easy. It feels very easy, and I could definitely hammer it way more if I wanted to, but that's kind of the point. You should be able to do these sessions day in and day out and just relax on them. And I think for the first time in a long time, I've really been enjoying just the rowing machine, which has been a very different thing, because rowing for me has always been tolerating the rowing machine through the winter, so that when it comes to summer, you can get in your boats, you can get in your 8s and your 4s and your pairs, and just enjoy being outside with your friends, and being fit enough to actually row. But now, obviously, especially with the pandemic going on, not getting into any boats, and we're not even at a club anyway, so I wouldn't be. But I really am enjoying being on the rowing machine. I'm doing it once, if not twice a day. I'm still going on the bike. And it's been great. It's been a great sort of release for me as well. and it's nice to see all of that effort sort of come together in a moment like this. So yeah, hopefully it looks like I'm thinking about winding it in. My power's dropping a little bit. I think my end time was like a 16:51.7. I think, like I said, it was like a 33-second PB, which is cost. In fact, if I look that up very quickly, what I think for this one I average, what was it, 141.1, so that is 339 watts, give or take 338 watts. And I think that my other one was like a 144.3, which is 308 watts. So this is 30 watts higher than that 2 years ago, which is substantial. There's 10% more power going down every single stroke, for 17 minutes, which is quite a big improvement. So very happy with it. Also, apologies for the hair clips. I've not had a haircut in a very long time. And my dad walking in, making sure that I'm still a functioning human being. He's got his, shortly after this, my dad did an FTP test. That's my split, so 141.1. Yeah, shortly after this, my dad did an FTP test, which he PB'd in as well, so it's PBs all round today, which I think we're both very happy with. We celebrated with a bit of pizza, and I'm just looking forward to moving to the next training block. Probably still work on the aerobic system a lot. Probably also going to drop some weight and try and become a little bit more efficient. Because you can see that I'm rating quite low in this, really, like rate 29-30. For someone who is actually very, quite aerobically fit, like I should be looking to rate a bit higher and taking the power down per stroke. So maybe next time I do a 5k, maybe I'll look for 31s, 32s for that piece. As long as I'm not losing any length, then that should be a little bit more efficient. Yeah, anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did enjoy doing it. And every single time I do a test, I think this year, I'm probably going to film it and just talk over it about what my block leading up to it has sort of been like, without giving away too many details. And if you want to ask questions, obviously please do. Yeah, I'm going to try and record more of my training, physically record it, as in with a video, and just keep a log of everything and stuff, because I think this is it's a bit more fun. But yeah, thanks.